I'm Grace Hertz, and this is Jeanne George, and Mary Larson is also helping with this interview today. We're going to interview Jeanne George about her own family background, all of her wonderful experiences at the drugstore, lots of other wonderful experiences in her life. Jeanne, will you tell us where you grew up, first of all, and where you were educated?
Well, I grew up on a family farm in Clay County, that's 6 miles northeast of Peterson, Iowa. And went to country school, and then went into high school at Peterson. And I graduated from Peterson High School. And you want me to go on?
Please.
And then it was during the Depression at that time. I attended, we didn't have normal training in high school, so I spent the next summer after I graduated at what was called the Iowa State Teachers College, so I could teach school a year. And I taught in our local one-room schoolhouse in the country the next year. And from then, after that year, I went back to state teachers and took my schooling there for the primary state diploma of teaching. And then I started teaching in the town schools after I graduated from state teachers.
Where did you teach?
Well, I taught the first year out. I was elected to teach at Cedar Falls, but I decided I had been there quite a while. I wanted to seek new territory and new surroundings, so I went to Guttenberg, Iowa on the Mississippi. And that, I was always pleased I went there because it was just like a foreign place. It was German descent, and the customs and everything were so different, and the scenery was so beautiful. And we were right on, our school building was right on the school, right on the edge of the Mississippi River. So it was a very interesting place to be. And after I taught there 2 years, I was elected to teach at Orange City and Peterson and Sioux Rapids. I've forgotten where else. Of course, my father was very anxious for me to teach at Peterson, and they always kidded me afterwards that I didn't decide to teach in Peterson, which I didn't, because they had gone to the trouble of electing me, but they laughed about it and thought it was all right. So that's the year I went to Sioux Rapids to teach. And of course, the very first one I saw in Sioux Rapids, I went in the drugstore, and there was Lyle filling a prescription. And with his quiet, friendly manner, I was attracted to him, but especially by his black hair, which he lost later.
Love at first sight, huh?
Yes.
Love at first sight?
Almost, on my part.
Does he remember that time when he first saw you? When you first saw him, did he remember that?
Oh, yes, I think he did.
That first time?
I think he did. Now that's our first date. Our first date was a funny one. I don't think I should go into that, or should I?
Yes, we have to hear it. Yes.
Well, he had a very good friend, Caldero, who worked in the bank. I think it was his father's bank. And he had a date with one of my best friends, who was a school teacher. Greta Wasser was her name. He had a date to go to the Spencer to a show, and they wanted he wanted Lyle and a girl to go with him. So he went to Lyle, and Lyle wasn't dating anybody. I don't think he ever had dated. And so he wasn't too anxious to go. But so Carl said, well, I'll have Greta get a date for you. And he said, she knows the girl who lives at the Green residence. thought that I had a roommate, but I had a roommate who was very, very odd. She really, her name was Purple, and she resembled her name. Anyhow, Lyle said, if you get me a date with her, I'll kill you. So he was scared to death who his date was going to be. So he was relieved when he came to the door, and it was me, I guess, instead of my roommate. Then, on the way to Spencer, there's a railroad track south of Spencer, and this Caldero was driving at that time plenty fast, and that big Cadillac, we were more or less lost in the back seat. And people in that day, you weren't very chummy on your first date. So he went over the railroad track, and I bounced off the seat into the floor. I'll never live that down to think he didn't have his arm around me and took care of me there. But we got to the show at Spencer, and it was a fine show, and that was our first date.
Well, then how much longer was it that you two got married? When did you get married?
Well, we were married in 1934. From Sioux Rapids, I had one of the teachers there, a native, and I decided if we wanted to advance any, we should be doing it. And Lyle had to go back to pharmacy in Des Moines, and so she and I went to Fort Dodge. In the last 5 years of my teaching, I taught at Fort Dodge. And that was a real education. Fort Dodge had a wonderful school at the time with several supervisors who instructed us in how to present lessons and so forth. And so we went to Fort Dodge, and that Lyle was back in Des Moines. One weekend he wanted me down there, and the next weekend I needed to be at Spencer because my parents had moved to Spencer from Peterson at that time, and Mother wasn't at all well, and since I was the youngest of the family, my dad and I were very close to each other. So one weekend I drove from Fort Dodge to Spencer, the next weekend I drove to Des Moines. So you know how hard it is for me to give up my driving now.
Definitely it is.
Well, then it was the Depression, and we would have been married at the time, but I couldn't teach and be married. And Lyle, of course, was still in school, so there was no chance. So after he was out, and we finally decided in 1934, after he passed the state board, that we would be married, and he had a relief job at Bevan's Drug at Spirit Lake for the summer. He had worked there in the winter a few months, and they needed a relief pharmacist that summer. So they waited till we came back from our honeymoon so that he could work there, and we sure hurried the honeymoon up.
Where did you go for your honeymoon?
To the Ozarks.
You did? How long were you gone?
Just a week, because we had to get back for that job. But it was a beautiful, beautiful time. And we thought there would be air conditioning, because in northwest Iowa, we had air conditioning in a lot of the buildings. And the heat bothered me. That's why we were married so early in the morning. And there wasn't one place in Missouri that you could go. I thought we could go to a show, we'd be cooled off for a while, or we'd have a motel that would be cool. There wasn't any place. And Lyle said I nearly left him in St. Louis because it was so hot. I just couldn't stand the heat.
Well, Jeanne, when did you two come to Lorenz? When did you come to Lorenz?
Well, in late 1934, we were up there during the summer, and then in late September, we came to Lorenz.
And what brought you here? Why did you come here?
Well, because that's where only place Lyle had a place to work was George's drugstore, and Lyle's parents, good as they were, the in-laws could all move in with a family.
Mhm.
So we couldn't, we didn't have a house, we couldn't afford a home, buy a home, so I moved in with the George family, and I never was treated so royally as I was treated. They gave us the nicest room in the house and everything. They were so wonderful. So I just started to work at the drugstore just little by little as I wanted to. They let me do as I wanted to. Of course, I went to Spencer one day a week to see my family up there, and that's how I got started.
What were your responsibilities in at the store? What did you do?
Well, they let me do anything I wanted to, so I sort of did quite a bit of cleaning. I went through the different drawers and different places. I was a nut on keeping things clean, and I threw away something that I shouldn't have. But I didn't get scolded for it. They laughed about it. And then I decided that I would start a gift shop. So, of course, the addition wasn't built on, but at the very back end there was a big there was a showcase, and that's where I had my first gifts. And the first gift shop in Lorenz was that. And Mrs. Margaret Olson was my first customer.
Hmm.
And she was the principal. A lot of people knew her, of course.
Do you remember what she bought as the first customer?
No, I really don't.
Mm-hmm. What types of things did you sell at your gift shop?
Well, it was mostly china and vases and just knickknacks like that. It was everyone bought a lot of vases in those days.
Mm-hmm.
We had orders and orders later. Then later, we expanded even before it was built on to the upstairs, and we had Bill Ketchum from Emmitsburg, a relative of the family, come down. He was the head of the athletic department, but he also built homes. He came and he built in shelving and corner cupboards in 3 rooms upstairs. And so I had one room that's full of cosmetic sets. In those days, people bought cosmetic sets. One room was filled with that, and the other rooms were Red Wing pottery dinner sets and crystal and vases.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a busy time.
Where did you go to purchase all these items you had for sale?
Well, we went usually once a year. We would go to Sioux City when they had a gift show, and then once a year we'd go to Chicago and buy at the Merchandise Mart and the Palmer House. And the Merchandise Mart, you know, is such an enormous building. It has everything in it, even way back. It had a restaurant and post office and bank and display after display rooms, all the different companies. So it was very interesting. So we learned to drive all over Chicago, especially Lyle did. And we walked, we rode the elevated and drove. So it was very interesting for us. So
besides the gift shop that you had, and then of course there was the pharmacy area, what other things did you have in the drugstore besides those, the gift shop and the pharmacy?
Well, we had the fountain was the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
We spent most of our time at the fountain, and it was usually filled even during the day. People came in, and it was noted for the malted milks. People came from Des Moines and stopped to get malted milks on their way to the lake. And they did that especially at Sioux Rapids because Lyle's father had the store at Sioux Rapids. And they came over to Lorenz in 1926. Lyle's family did. And he left Lyle and and Homer and Aubrey's father at Sioux Rapids to run that store. And that was just sold the other day, and that had been owned by Georgia since 1910.
Many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm. It was awfully hard to see it sold, but that's the way it works out. You don't have doctors, so your drugstores won't last.
What made the malted milk so special that you made?
Well, I guess the Georges knew how to make them. We had hard ice cream at the time.